May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable before you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. When you live in a place for any length of time, you have the ability oftentimes to get up in the middle of the night, not even bother to turn a light on, and find your way either to the bathroom, the kitchen, or wherever it is you have to go. Is that not right? Well, I pride myself on that. Until I crack my knee or my leg on a piece of furniture that I forgot was there. And it doesn't help that my dog is very enthusiastic this day about leaving toys in places I don't expect them, especially in the middle of the night when you step on something and it feels like maybe a possum is underfoot. Like, ah! I bring this up because I also think about how many movies I have seen that use darkness as a place to create utter fear, not confidence. I will never forget the movie I saw. I think I was maybe 13 years old when it came out. So a lot of you won't even know this movie, but Wait Until Dark. Oh my goodness, that movie was terrifying, but it was told from the perspective of a woman who was blind. And so most of the movie is in very dim light, and everything that happens brings you to a heightened sense of awareness of sound and anything else that's going on. And then I read this morning's gospel. You are the light of the world. And Jesus is continuing his Sermon on the Mount that we began last week. He is directly talking now to his followers, his disciples. And he doesn't say, I think it's a good idea that you should be the light of the world, or that you might be the light of the world, or that you could be. He says, you are the light of the world. And then he begins to tell the story that is kind of funny in a way, that no one lights their lamp and puts it under a bushel. Now we think of baskets, right? Well, a bushel in the time of Jesus was actually a metal bucket that had big handles that you could lift up. And it was a bushel metal thing, was a way of measuring the amount of grain that you might put, or it gave you a measuring tool. But the truth of the matter is people in the time of Jesus used bushels to put over their lamps in order to do things maybe not so obvious to all those in the household. It was the original lampshade, if you will. So you want a little dim lighting, you want to set the mood in the house, you put the bushel on the lamp. I don't know how to be more obvious about this. But if you let your light be in a place on a stand, it's amazing what it can illuminate. And I think of the many times in my own fantasy life of liturgy, of the times I have really studied the Orthodox Church, let's say the Easter Vigil. And it's so powerful, instead of walking in and having electric lights on, but to actually walk into a church in utter darkness. And one by one, candles are lit, beginning, and I don't mean to get off on liturgy, but beginning with the Paschal candle, and then the congregation is all gathered around, and everybody takes their candle and lights it off of the Paschal candle, and all of a sudden, faces are illuminated, human lives are illuminated, and the church in all of its glory with gold leaf here and there, because icons are from the ceiling down to the floor, that begins shimmering and a whole life is taken on. And so I go to this place in myself and go, what is it that I am trying to hide from the world? And what is it that I am willing to offer of myself? And believe me, I don't think that Christianity was ever intended to be a private religion about me. I think it is about us and about what happens to us as community. But I think that's a good starting place. Am I trying to shelter parts of myself that I really don't want you to see? Any of you relate to that? You remember the first time you decided as maybe pre-adolescent, I think I'm just not going to tell that this happened. And you begin to have your places, your secret places. Or do you remember the first time you absolutely cracked yourself open out of a desire to love, and you want another person to know everything? Maybe it's the first time before you've been hurt really badly. And you just go, this is what I think and this is what I feel, and it's the most freeing state of being. But then you get hurt and all of a sudden you got it clamped down again. Why is Jesus telling us we are the light of the world? What is it that he's hoping we will understand about the nature of our lives with each other that might illuminate something for each other to keep us from falling down on this toy that's on the carpet that feels like you're stepping on a possum, to keep us open, continually remaining and trying to open ourselves so that we don't do damage to ourselves or others by hiding things. I know maybe 3 years ago I brought in this notion that comes from Japanese art, and I preached about it. It's there's a word called kintsugi. Kintsugi. And it has to do with repairing things that are broken, particularly if you had a beloved ceramic cup that you used in your house. I know this is hard for us to understand because we're in a disposable culture. But you had a cup that you inherited from your great-grandparent, and you've used it every day, and somehow or another, maybe in the middle of the night because the toy was on the floor, you stumble and drop it and it breaks. Today, we would throw it out, wouldn't we? But no. In Japanese culture, you would go to someone who makes pottery, and they would spend time and care and love putting that back together. And if there was a piece, a shard that was missing that you couldn't find, they would fill it in with this kind of glue over and over and over again. And every seam where you are putting this broken piece back together, every seam is embedded with gold leaf. So what you see, what becomes prominent, is this is the place, these are the places where something broke. And it's beautiful. I have a coffee table book I should bring in of Kintsugi, famous pieces of pottery that have been repaired. But their idea is, rather than try to conceal that it was broken, you highlight it. And where you've highlighted it, it becomes this place of utter beauty. I bring all this up because, as an artist, I've been very interested in using something like that, the Kintsugi method, in my drawings, which are about things falling apart and crumbling. But all of a sudden, as I'm reading this gospel, I think, no, it's not about gluing it back together, but letting it be a place where light can get in and where light can come out, both. And then it made me think of Leonard Cohen, only because I recently got to see a documentary on Leonard Cohen's piece of music, Hallelujah, that we all know because of Shrek, if anything else. But I love Leonard Cohen as a poet. He's dark, he's deep, he's spiritual, and there's a particular song he wrote that's called Anthem. Maybe the song isn't something you will remember, but the refrain in this is so stunning to me. He says, "Ring the bells that can still ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Jesus has us focusing on light coming out from us, but it can only come out from us if it's gotten in there. And it makes me think of the places spiritually where we have the most light to offer, is oftentimes because that is the place we are most broken. It's from the place where we have experienced the need for it to be healed and repaired. And when we have experienced that, it shines no matter what. You can't make it bigger, better, brighter. It is from our life experience and how that informs us. And he tells us, you are the light of the world. Not that we should be, not that we could be, but that we are. And so we take the very stuffing of our lives, we take the very experiences of our lives, and as long as we have not shuttered them, as long as we haven't put on the armor of defense, our light will shine. And I feel that it's an obligation that we teach vulnerability is a state of holiness, not a state that we have to hide. And so, I don't know, maybe it's not appropriate. I think our spiritual exercise is to begin to unzip a little bit, to just begin to unzip a little bit and let what's there show forth. All of our, as Leonard Cohen says, forget being perfect. Just be. Be honest. Be real. and let that light shine forth. And if we do, we begin to see it in each other, and all of a sudden, there's little glimmers of gold leaf over here. There's a face illuminated over there, a face seen that we didn't even know was there. And it's incredible. We are the light of the world. And it doesn't do us any good to try to hide it.